So I've just been watching a couple of videos by Conference Report and Silver Soul, and they were talking about um, miracles and the incompatibility of a belief in miracles with uh, naturalism, scientific naturalism. Conference Report was calling it methodological naturalism, which is, I guess, to oppose it to metaphysical naturalism, but I think one is already doing metaphysics by saying that method or practice could be separate from theory, metaphysics. So let's just call it naturalism. It would seem that miracles and naturalism are compatible, but I think it's only if we forget that science itself is a poetics. Conference Report, referred to Silver Soul's worldview as a kind of an atypical sort of Christianity where it's more the poetics of Christianity, and I think that's a really apt term, because if religion is to remain feasible, if it's to continue to legitimate itself even in our quote unquote modern age, it's going to need to be deliteralized, which is to say, it's going to have to recognize that it's dealing with symbols, but that's not to oppose merely symbolic perception and understanding to some other sort of understanding that human beings have. All of our experience can be known only symbolically, to the extent that we can express ourselves symbolically in relation to it. And so whether or not it's religious iconography or religious doctrines that we're interpreting, or it's Schrodinger's wave equation, we're dealing with symbols, we're dealing with a work of interpretation, of hermeneutics, of imagination, ultimately. And so, when we try to understand what it might mean that God incarnated, became flesh, died, and was resurrected, we've got to free ourselves from the need to understand this historically. In the sense that it's a description of some historical facts which occurred literally. I think there's a deeper meaning here. When you think about the mystery of the Trinity, Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Father is generally understood by the Christian mystics as the ground of being, the mysterious abyss from which everything emerges and of which nothing can really be said. The Son is interpreted as nature, as the cosmos, as that which emerges out of this ground of being or abyss, as light and warmth, and the light and the warmth eventually congeal into all the physical forms and living forms that we see around us. And the Holy Spirit then is this the sun, the universe, nature, unrolling or evolving through history toward a more fuller consciousness of itself. And this comes to a head in the course of human history, where the Holy Spirit becomes human consciousness, trying to attain greater realizations of freedom in society, and greater realizations of love in society, and basically to, the human struggle is to create, to the greatest extent that we can, a sort of heaven on earth. Is it not? Otherwise, what are we doing here? If we're not, if that isn't the goal of history, then how else are we to interpret it? And all of this is a work of interpretation, as I said, and understanding it this way, we're able to avoid the sort of exclusivism that would say that no, only the Christian interpretation of reality is true. Well, there are many interpretations, and I think if we really look at all the various religious traditions on the planet, their deep structures are not all that different, even though on the surface they may appear contradictory. I think if we use our imaginations, we can see a certain consistency in the spiritual wisdoms of all human beings, despite the diversity of cultural packaging. It's sort of pasted on top of these deeper wisdoms. So I guess basically what I'm saying is methodological naturalism, or any kind of naturalism, any sort of positivistic picture of experience neglects the fact that nothing we see, even with our senses, is lacking symbolic meaning. And the fact that nature itself is the symbol of something. And whenever we have an experience of the sublime, that's what we're experiencing. That this beauty, this natural beauty, this sunset, or this picture from Hubble of some nebula exploding, or some other galaxy. This is a sublime image because it points to something more. There's some meaning that I can't quite grasp with my understanding, but that I can imagine, I can intuit, and it's that intuition of something more that makes the human being religious and spiritual. And I think something like methodological naturalism or positivism, while it doesn't prevent us from having those feelings, it does end up telling us that, oh, that's just a hallucination. It's really just a bunch of, as I've characterized materialism before, as saying it's just a bunch of dead stuff out there that has no meaning. I think that's an unfair interpretation, which is why I continually challenge it. So, yeah, I'll just let that stew with you. Thanks for listening.